Hi everybody, it's John back again with another model inbox review. You're probably having a look at this picture and thinking, God, is that something out of some sci-fi movie or maybe Star Trek or something? Well, it's actually not. This is an aircraft from a bygone era because this thing was actually designed just after World War II and it entered service with the United States Air Force in about 1954. And it was the very first all rocket armed point defence interceptor. It was a proper bomber destroyer, and the aircraft's armament was encased in those wingtip tanks that look like wingtip tanks, but they're not. They're actually wingtip rocket pods. And the forward nose cone there, the black nose cone in front of the nose, is actually the fire control system, radar system that guided the aircraft onto the target, and then the rockets were actually, they weren't guided, they weren't radar guided, they were just fire and forget weapons, a bit like a Sidewinder or Zuni missile. Anyway, this aircraft is actually the Northrop F-89 Scorpion. Originally entered service in 1954 as an F-89A, B and a C, all doing slightly different variants, and then the most numerous developed version was the F-89D, which is the subject of this model and is the subject of the aircraft in front of you. Which aircraft are we doing? Well, we're actually doing this one. This is the Revell Authenticate 179th scale Northrop F-89D Scorpion. The kit was designed and produced of an era when models were actually scaled to fit the box, and Revell were a leading marketer of this. Monogram did quite a lot of this type of thing as well, and so did Aurora, but most of the early kits, and you'll see in a minute when you have a look at the parts on the sprue, most of the early kits were designed like this to this culture in the 1950s. The only company that didn't really follow this type of thing was most of the European companies, namely Airfix and Frog, who were building kits in the 1950s. Well, Airfix were building injection molded kits in 1949, but this was one of the very early kits. It's a two-seat interceptor fighter, and Revell released this kit in 1955. Yep, 1955. Not a lot to go on in terms of the actual boxing history of this, but this artwork was used highly effectively for most of the boxings from Revell in the 50s and early 60s. You can see from the plastic there in that image that it's quite a crude kit, isn't it? And we'll see that when we get to the parts. Anyway, 1955 was a release date, and in the same year you had the same artwork on a slightly different box. This was H221 follow-on from H221 to H221-89, which was the second release in 1955. Exactly the same kit. The sprues are identical. The box is pretty much identical, and apart from the serial number on the box, which was H221-89, there's not very much in the way of differences between the first and second release in 1955. Then the kit was released by Revell Great Britain in 1956. There's an interesting thing I want to show you on the box in a minute when we go into having a look at the actual kit itself. But this was the Revell Great Britain release in 1956 for the European market initially. This, of course, Revell at the time was an American company, and 1956 went through to 1960, and you have a slightly different box here and slightly different illustration of the Revell double value model. Again, it's exactly the same kit inside. It's funny, on the box it says you can whip fly it, contains complete flight package and instructions. I think this kit actually had a glider model inside the box, which was why it was called a double value model. You had the F-89 kit inside the box, and you had like a chuck glider also. Not even, I don't think it was even of the same design inside of the Scorpion. It was just a chuck glider, but that was released in 1960. And in 1961 you had a series of kits released through Revell. This was Revell Great Britain again, releasing this kit in 1961. Similar box, exactly the same as before. And then you also had Revell's release in 1961 of H126. Same box again. It's pretty much nondescript, the difference between the two boxes. And then again you had in 1961 Revell Lodella. You can tell a Revell Lodella because it has marker registration here under the Revell flag, and that is a Lodella. I think it's Spanish, for Spanish-speaking countries. But that's H156, 1961 release from Revell Lodella of the Scorpion. Then in 1966, Revell New Zealand also released this kit for the Far East, probably New Zealand and Australia, I would have thought. Same box, same illustration, no difference whatsoever. And in 1969, Revell Japan got their hands on this particular kit from Revell, and they're selling it as a Northrop F-89D Scorpion with different artwork, as you can see there. I quite like this artwork actually. It gives a little bit more of an idea of what this aircraft looked like in plan form. It's quite a big beast actually. When you see the plastic, you'll see what I mean in a minute. That's 1969, Revell Japan. Goes to 1970, and you've got Revell Kikola. Revell Kikola's boxing, the only major difference is it has Industria Brasileira written under the Revell logo there. And I think Revell Kikola sold models for the South American market. And yeah, this is no exception. 1970 release there. Then you go to 1978, and this is actually the boxing of the kit that I've got of this model, the Northrop F-89D Scorpion. This is a straight Revell release. Sorry, 1974 this is, sorry. The 1974 is the boxing I've got. And then you go to 1978 and you have this. Yeah, it's a reiterance of the original artwork again, but this time from Revell Takara. I think Takara sold models in Japan. 1978 goes through to 1987, and more new artwork here. This is the Revell release of H126 and Northrop's F-89D Scorpion, just different artwork. 87 goes through to 1988, and this kit was released as a twin pack with the 179th scale F-89 Scorpion and a 193rd scale B-58 Hustler from Convair, both Revell kits. Interesting, you can actually get hold of this model, and I'll show you what the options and costs are when we get through to that. But that's 1988, twin pack with the Scorpion and the Hustler. Then we go to 1991, and this is actually a new tool. This is the kit that's replaced the 179th scale in Revell, the blue boxings from Revell, and this kit has actually found its way into a couple of other companies who've reboxed this model, but that's 1991. This kit is far superior to the model that I'm doing, but yeah, it's a bit of nostalgia, the kit I'm building. So that's 1991 release, and then in 2021 Atlantis got hold of the original 179th scale Northrop F-89D Scorpion, even though they call it 177th scale on the box down here. Can you see that? There we go. It's actually a 179th scale kit. So that's the Atlantis offering, and that is the last offering you'll get of this model anywhere in the world, just the Atlantis offering. Show you another image of the F-89. This is actually an F-89J, slightly revised version of the Scorpion. Pretty much the same aircraft in every respect, but I think this aircraft had upgraded engines and upgraded avionics and radar fire control system. So anyway, we'll bring the camera down. Let's have a look at this little kit. The box I've got is not actually that fantastic. We'll just palm the camera down. We'll have a look at this kit and see what the score is with it. Here we go. The kit itself, yeah, it's covered in tape, but it is that same 1974 release as we said before. There's an interesting thing about this box. I'll just show you the front of this box. The image there is pretty much the same. Photo of actual model, yeah. On the side You can't see it very well, but there's an image of the aircraft built up on the side there. And then you've got some pictorial images of the aircraft built as well. The cockpit and top drop tanks underneath. Yeah, quite nice. And then on this side, you've got something that I found quite interesting, because it says photos of actual model here, and then it says a ready to assemble plastic model kit, 1974, trademarked by Revell Incorporated in Venice, California. And then under that it says made in Great Britain by Revell GB Limited, Cranbourne Road, Potters Bar, Hertfordshire in England. So this kit was actually made in England. What I'm guessing that means is that the parts were shipped over, because it is a Revell release, and they were packaged in England in this particular box, because this box, artwork on the box, this is the only release that this artwork was found on. So yeah, but I just thought that was quite interesting. There's also a colour call out there, black 33, red G19, khaki M26 and yellow G69. All of those colours I've got, so that's quite nice. You also need silver for the airframe G11. We'll have a look at the decals in a minute, and we'll have a look at the parts in a minute. Let's just turn these all over. Quite a few of these parts have come off screw, and I've put the loose parts into a separate bag, so we can have a look at those in a minute. But what we'll have a quick look at the instruction leaflet, because the instructions, remembering that this is a kit made and designed in an awful long time ago, the instruction sheet is about A4, isn't it? No, it's smaller than A4, but it's not. It's bigger than A5. And you've got some information there on the front page, and some stats, and there's some building tips. This was very common for kits of this era. You've got decal application guide and information there about what first fit parts together and trim. It's just basic general information, hints and tips on how you build this kit. And then you've got 3 stages of construction, and this is quite interesting from Revell, because Revell did exactly the same as what Airfix did in the 1960s, but this was in the 1950s. But there's something unusual about these parts, and you can see it a mile off with the instruction leaflet. You've got assembly instructions underneath, and it's in text, and it tells you what parts and what to do with them and when to put them onto the kit, and that's quite interesting. You've got an exploded view there of the parts, and you can see the interior straight away. 2 pilots, 2 seats, floor pan, instrument panel, the whole lot. It's all one part, and that was common of early Revell kits. I built a Revell Crusader prior to this, quite a number of years ago, and you can see the inbox review on that, and on my channel, the build progress video, and it was along the same lines. I think that kit was 1/67th scale. But the other thing that's interesting that you can see straight away is that the decal application guide is actually part of the instructions when you're building this model. They're actually asking you to put the decals on as you build the kit. But are they? I think what you'll find is a pictorial image of what the parts actually show you, and you'll see them in a minute when we have a look at the parts. But basically, you've got the fuselage and interior construction and the engines there. You have to repeat this engine section here on the other side. Yeah, quite straightforward. And then you've got wing assembly. Again, you double that up for the other side. Again, they're telling you to put the decal on here on that section. Rocket pods, main undercarriage oleos, and then in the final section they're telling you to put the cockpit assembly, landing gear in place, tail fin, tail plane arrangement. An interesting feature of this kit is you can see the canopy will be framed by separate plastic parts, which is really good, because what you can do is you can actually paint those plastic parts and then fit the canopy to the airframe, and then fit the plastic parts over the canopy to form the canopy frame. So that's really quite useful, and I'll probably be doing that. So anyway, that's the instructions. You can see they're quite easy to follow, not really any issues there. Have you noticed there's no decal application guide or paint guide? That's because they're showing you what colours to paint the kit whilst you assemble it. The decals on this model, bearing in mind this is 1974, these transfers are 41 years old, and the backing film on them is still pretty transparent. If I peel this little bit back here, can you see the backing film on those transfers? They're pretty clear, aren't they? They are pretty raised. You know, they are pretty raised, and there's not an awful lot of decals on here, but what is on there is pretty good register. So well done, Revell, in 1974. The decals for the earlier generation kits I don't think would have been exactly the same. So what we'll do is we'll get the loose parts out first so I can show you. I've started doing this now. Any loose parts in model kit boxes, I just put them into a separate bag so that I don't lose any of them, because getting parts replacements for these kits is a nightmare. You've got the rocket pods at the side there, the decal, you can see the rockets inside there. You can pick them out quite nicely. So I'll pick it up. Not very well, is it? You've got rocket pods on those two, and there's two of these. Yeah, it's not picking them up very well, but never mind. The main wheels, they're loose, both of them, so we'll just show you one of them. The main wheels are quite nicely detailed. No issues with that. The backing of the wheels, yeah, they're not too bad, are they? There's one of the drop tanks. We'll have a look at those when we get to the sprue. This is one of the canopy frames. This is actually snapped off the main canopy frame, but it'll be fine because I can just glue it into place after I've painted that. But that goes over the top of the main canopy frame. You've got the tail plane. Not much to write home about there. It's just a slab of plastic, isn't it? Not much to worry about there. Jet air intakes. Again, not much of an issue there. They are through parts, which is nice. You paint the inside of them up. There's two of those, obviously. And you've got the... Actually, we'll have a look at those in a minute. And here we've got... one of the rocket pods here. The backs of the rocket pods. So that's the back of the rocket pod that goes on the wingtip, and then this part would fit over the front of that like that. You can see what it's going to look like, can't you? Interesting. It's not a nice fit actually. It doesn't fit together fantastically well. That's one of the halves of the exhaust jet pipes. Again, they're just slab pieces of plastic. They're not really, you know, detailed or trying to make them particularly accurate. They're just, you know, they're just slabs of plastic. And then you've got the drop tank here, which again is just a drop tank, and that's in two halves. And there's two of those on the kit, obviously. You can see that's not an issue. Now then, the parts. Prepare to be shocked. And I mean shocked. That's the main canopy frame at the back. It's quite clear actually. It's not a bad piece of plastic. It's quite clear. That's not too bad, is it? There should be a windscreen in here somewhere, and that's obviously fallen off the kit. So let's see if I can find that before we show you the rest of the parts, because I really do want to make sure that it's in here. Yeah, it is. There it is. The windscreen on this kit is quite clear as well, as you can see. There it is. It's quite a nice piece of plastic. The actual canopy is quite nice. Here's the first sprue. Got a couple of undercarriage oleos there, full of absolutely covered in flash. They're all going to need cleaning up. And then you've got something unusual. This was what companies in America did with their airframes. Can you see the outline of USAF written on that part? That's the decal application guide. It's actually printed on the part of the kit. Unbelievable. And you've got US Air Force written there as well. Can you just make that out? US Air Force. That's another decal application guide. And on the back here you've got, what's that written on the back of there? I think it's a serial number on the back of the tail. Yeah, interesting. It's different, isn't it? There's absolutely no detail whatsoever inside the airframe. These gaps are, of course, where the engines get bolted to. For some reason, they're not slab-sided. Here's one of the rocket pods there. You can see that. Quite a big slab, isn't it? That's the underside of the wing. The wing wheel wells are pretty ridiculous. And then you've got US Air Force as well there. Yeah, lovely. That's the other half of a jet pipe. And that is the interior. 2 pilots, pilot seats, and the instrument panel, the anti-glare panel. It's covered in flash, but that constitutes the entire interior, and that's all to be painted. At least you haven't got to assemble it, have you? You know, different. You've got a lot of flash on this sprue. All of this here is all flash. There's no parts involved in that. I don't know what that is. It looks like a part, but it's not. It's just part of the flash. You've got the tail fin top there. That's the nose cone. That's the canopy frame. You have to watch how you snip that off because it looks like it's ready to break. And that's the windscreen frame, as you can see there. Yeah. Interesting parts. And then you've got the nose wheel gear, which is, yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? And on this one, you've actually got a star and barlet. So that's how Revell instructed you on how to put the decals onto the kit. And again, you've got some more decal application guides there, US Air Force. Interesting. So anyway, that's the parts. What I'm going to quickly do is I just want to put these sprues back into this bag, because the last thing I want to do is lose anything on this kit. Because if you lost anything on this kit, you would have to buy a donor model, or possibly right off to Atlantis, because they're the only company that manufacture this kit now. Nobody else manufactures this model, just Atlantis. Yeah, there you go. Unusual scale this as well, 1/79th. It's a very unusual scale. The parts don't, oh god, some of the parts come off sprue. The interior and the pilots, so I'll just try and get that into the other bag. So that's those in there. And then we'll put these into here. There we go. Try and put all these in. The last thing, honestly, if you lost a part on this kit, you would never be able to get a replacement, would you, without buying a donor model. And these kits can be picked up quite cheap, but they're often a lot of money, because it's not really because they're rare, because they're not, it's because they're old. People seem to get a bit greedy when they see that they've got an old kit, and they think it's going to put the price up from, say, what it's worth. I would say no more than about a tenner to about £50 or £60 in some cases, but they never sell for that price. So that's interesting, isn't it? One shield in there. Yeah. So I'll just pan that up. Onto there, instructions, and then pop that onto there. It's not a very nice box to look at, but it's better than nothing, I suppose, isn't it? Anyway, let's just read off the gump on this so we can get this video closed down, and then we can get on with the world. The model we're doing an in-box review on tonight is the Revell Northrop F89D Scorpion. Its release date was originally 1955, but the boxing I have is a 1974 release. Its serial number is H126 and it's in scale of 1/79th. There are decals for one version, and I had to do quite a bit of research to find out what the markings were on this kit, but it's actually for a Northrop F89D Scorpion of the 514th Air Defense Group, 18th Fighter Interception Squadron, Alaskan Air Command, based at Ladd Air Force Base in Alaska for the United States Air Force. There are 41 parts on 4 grey plastic sprues and 2 parts on a transparent sprue, totaling 43 parts. The dimensions of the kit will be about 8.5 inches long by 10 inches in span, and it should sit about 2 3/4 inches high on its undercarriage. Now then, the options and costs cover the small scales up to 1/68th. Now, there is a company called Sanwa who produce a US Fighter Group B. This comprises of an F-80C Shooting Star, an F-84F Thunderstreak, an F-89D Scorpion, an F-100D Super Sabre, and an F-102A Delta Dagger. They're all probably around about 1/81st-ish scales, but there's no scale marked on the box, so I can't guarantee this. But a lot of Sanwa's kits, individually boxed kits, are around about 1/81st. In 1/81st, Revell also do a CBS Air Group comprising of a B-57B Canberra, an F-89D Scorpion, an F-100C Super Sabre, an F-101A Voodoo, and an F-102A Delta Dagger. These kits are quite rare and they retail for anything between £100 and £150. 1/79th scale, you have obviously the F-89D Scorpion, which retails for anything from £4 to about £43. And they also do a twin pack set of the F-89D Scorpion and the B-58 Convair Hustler in 1/93rd scale, but the F-89 is the 79th scale variant. In a twin pack, this kit retails for anything between £23 and £40, and it is available. You can usually get this kit quite easily on eBay, Amazon's other selling media sites and stuff. The Revell kit of the F-89D Scorpion has been reboxed by a number of companies. These are Atlantis, who retail for about £25 to £33, Revell GB, who retails for £25 to £35, Revell Japan, Kikola, Revell Lodella, and Revell New Zealand and Takara. They all have reboxed these kits, but I've got no prices available for publication at the moment. In 1/72nd scale, Ace Hobby do an F-89D and a J Scorpion, and they also do another boxing of an F-89D stroke J in the same box. These kits all retail for anything between £15 and £20. There's a company called Air Model who do a vacuum form kit of an F-89 Scorpion. That kit retails for anything between £10 and £30. Hobbycraft do a fairly decent F-89 A, B, C, D, H and J Scorpion, all in separate boxings for between £12 and £30. The Revell Revamp F-89D and J Scorpion retails between £10 and £30. And Revell also do a US Air Force 75th anniversary set, which is quite readily available and comprises of an F-16 Fighting Falcon, an F-89D Scorpion, and an F-117A Nighthawk. And this kit is at present on sale on Amazon for £37, but some other media sites you might have to pay £45. Reboxed kits of the 72nd scale model. Hobbycraft's kit is reboxed by Academy in 2 separate boxings of a D and a J variant Scorpion. They retail for about £12 to £25. And Hasegawa Monogram, They've reboxed the Revell kit in 2 separate boxings of the F89D and J Scorpion for about £20 to £22. There's also a company called Hobby Time who do a 1/68th scale F84F and F89 Scorpion in a twin pack, and that kit goes for £28 to £50. Conclusions. Now, this kit is a kit from a very different model production culture. In the 1950s, this was how kits were made in the USA. They were scaled to fit the box and the models were very crude in design. The decal application guide was marked on the airframe itself on the parts, and the interior parts were more than often just one part. I did build the Revell Republic F84F Thunderstreak in my early years, maybe when I was about 10, 11 years old. It did go together pretty well as I remember, but I didn't paint the kit and the decals fell off pretty rapidly. I will endeavour to do as good a job as I can, and hopefully the decals will stay on this time. Anyway, that's the inbox review for the F89 Northrop Scorpion from Revell. I hope this video's been of some use. If you have any queries and questions, just pop them in the comments boxes and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.